Yes. Greetings and welcome to Survival Strategies for the Apocalypse. What was originally entitled, what is it? Creative and Buoyant Resiliency During Challenging Times is now disintegrated into like how to not die. Kill yourself or others during these challenging times, because we know we're here for mental health awareness and we're not intending to use any of those ideas lightly, but these are skills that have helped us both, and we will introduce ourselves momentarily, in surviving our own mental health crises, in addition to trying to feel okay just for today. So my name is Louisa. I'm here with certified professional trauma-informed recovery coach, badass She Recovers coach, co-host of our podcast together, Sober Sex. She didn't want me to say witch, but she's a magical witch. Rose Romain.
Hi. Hi. And this is badass Louisa, co-founder of the label Raw, and songwriter, punk, joyful upsetter, long-time clean and sober person, and magical friend, and animal trainer, and so many wonderful things, and co-host also of our fabulous podcast, Sober Sex. Hi, everybody. Hi. How's it going? We are really, we're happy to be here, to be able to sort of spend the next 15 minutes just going over some strategies, really. As Louisa so eloquently pointed out, like initially we were talking about like resilience and buoyancy in times of challenging times, and now it's like shit is on. What are we gonna do?
Which I think it's important to speak to, you know, because like at one point it was like, I'm gonna learn how to make pasta, like as in like homemade pasta, and like maybe perm. And now it's like we're going into second lockdown, and I don't know about you guys, but I think it's a tough one, you know, especially as a lot of us in the dance music community have handled a lot of kind of push-pull, like disappointment, you know, stuff that was going to happen and keeps getting pushed back or canceled, not to mention financial insecurity, not to mention loss of feeling like we have a community or a place to kind of be together and celebrate what it feels like to hear loud music in a dark room.
Absolutely.
Vital, apparently.
And also like a form of therapeutic well-being in itself. And I don't think we give enough credit for that, like what it is to be in community and to be in spaces where we feel like the somatic experience of music going through us. I think the tears are going to be shed when we go back on the dance floor. So Lou, can you talk a little bit about what it's been like for you, like just going into this?
I mean, initially it was actually a really kind of welcome break. It felt really productive at first. Like when I talk about it first, I mean like 7 to 8 months ago. Like I have a hard time with traveling, so it was actually really nice to be able to kind of feel home, stabilized, in routine, get to work on music. But then kind of as time wore on and more stuff continued to get canceled or pushed back, and the kind of idea of like, how long is this going to go on for? I noticed a lot of kind of like shattering, like a lot of my ego or persona, like stuff that something that I was exclusively able to kind of contact in a performance space started to like get eroded, which felt really weird because I'm not seeing that many people. So it was like a kind of like, who am I? What's going on? And then more recently, we thought, myself and my band, which is an exciting development that was supposed to happen, you know, 8 months ago, but is presently been pushed back. We had a week of rehearsals for a festival that has now been canceled. And that was tough news just because it's like, we were so excited, even in like limited capacity, social distance, seated, you know, like even with those stipulations, we were really excited to play together and perform. And that is no longer going to happen. So that's been a bit, it's just, you know, it's a hard pill to swallow at a certain point. Like it hurts.
Right. And also that you'd had like a collective coming together and a rehearsal period, and then the expectations of that, you know, not coming through are really painful, right? Like there's a grieving process.
Yeah, I think there's some grieving, and also, I mean, I think we'll talk about it kind of more in terms of the tools that we are able to employ during these challenging times, like, but the idea of even during rehearsal and even like not necessarily in a performance space, but like trying to stay present and out of expectation, like being like holding it really lightly, or this kind of like Buddhist idea of like already broken, like, can I be present enough to really enjoy what's happening as it's happening without thinking about the fact that it like all of this work might be for nothing? You know, can I ground so deeply in the practice of doing what we do that even if it ends up not being like for an audience, that like, can I be worthy of the thing that I love to do, as opposed to like praying for a moment where I gets to be kind of on a bigger scale? You know, can I like enjoy what it feels like to be making music with my friends, even if no one gets to see it, you know? And that was really sweet. And it was almost painful, because it was like, oh man, I love this. I missed it so much. But I feel like it helped me kind of like metabolize everything that I had been longing for, you know? So, I mean, that's, I guess, just to say, if you two are in a similar position of having stuff canceled constantly, or really missing the community, or missing the somatic feeling of very loud music in a dark room with like flashing lights, you are not alone. And I think as collectively, we are kind of grieving that space, you know? Bummer.
Let's talk about what we're going to look at and try to sort of discuss over the next 15 minutes. So first of all, one of the things that we both thought were really important, why we're kind of talking about what's been going on recently, is that it's really important to sort of check in with yourself initially. And depending on who you are or what your background is with that, you might have different expectations around that. So one thing that I really love to do is the night before, and when I say love, I hold that very lightly as well, because I actually don't love it, but I know that I'm like not my best self without it. So the night before, I'll look at what time I have to get up the next day, if at all a getting up is appropriate. But certainly before like anybody in the household needs me or whatever, that I set my alarm 15 minutes just before, so I can just have a moment with self and force myself out of bed just to take a minute to go, what the fuck is going on with me? And sit down on the floor, get a blanket, cup of tea or coffee, whatever floats your boat, and just have a moment that I don't reach for my phone and then just go like, what the, like in the world, so that I show up for myself first and foremost. And, you know, I say 15 minutes, it can sometimes be 5. And often my body can feel heavy and yucky because it's the morning. So then I kind of look at what the day ahead looks like and think, okay, is it possible that at some point during the day I can make another moment for myself? And what might that look like? Because I know like the minute I pick my phone up and I get involved in emails or what anybody else's needs in the house might be, that I've abandoned myself. So just sort of making a plan throughout the day to check in, no matter how painful it feels. And something that I've really been doing since we've gone into the second lockdown in Paris is just getting out the house. I am not an athlete. However, I will say there's a lot to be said for getting your heart rate up and just spinning around the block really quickly, just as like some fast, intense kind of movement to kind of shake shit off. And there's these really great exercises that I learned last year called traumatic response exercises, which are essentially just shaking the body. And often I feel like a bit of a twat doing the shake, but if I run around the block really fast, I find that it kind of like bounces it out like that same way that I might have gone if I was like out and I was like moving or whatever. And so that's been really helpful. Not to kind of be like, I'm gonna work out and it looks like this, like squats and being in the park and being this person or whatever. Like, okay, if that's your thing, but it's certainly not my thing. That's Louisa's thing, let's be honest. But for me, it's really just about like consistently little showing up, because sometimes it just feels too much to do like the big expectation that I have on myself about what showing up or looking after myself looks like. So that is the one thing that I've been doing. What have you been doing, Lou?
I mean, I think checking in, like my morning, especially because now like there's not a lot of travel happening, my morning practice has gone from like a solid like 40-minute chunk of my day to now it's like 3 hours. And I'm finding that like it's actually something I really look forward to. So for me right now, and it often shifts and grows, like I wake up and I think when you say like get a blanket and a cup of tea, like I wake up and I go downstairs and I cuddle the dog. So the dog and I sing as her song, and I send her to wake up my partner while I make breakfast for us. And then kind of after that, I have been trying to like improve my my French because I live here and my French still sucks. So I've been doing a Duolingo and I think it's called Elevate, which is like just kind of memory, math, writing training, just to kind of, it makes my brain a little bit sharper, because otherwise when I go into my morning pages, the next phase of my routine, which is like 3 longhand pages written kind of about what's going on, checking in, like that's kind of where my check-in is. And it's also where I get a lot of songwriting done. Like that's where the muse shows up for me. That if I've done these kind of like brain training exercises, I find that I'm much more alert and awake. Whereas often like previously, I would find myself like nodding off, like being like, well, I just want to sleep, like while writing. So that's helpful. And then meditate 10 to 15 minutes. And then, which has been very helpful to actually like have a practice. Cause like it used to be like can you just like be present for literally one breath? And the answer would often be like, no. Yeah. But now I find that if I meditate before I get on a screen, that's really helpful. And this is all just kind of a setup because again, like many of us, I think in a time where stuff was like, go, 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 we didn't necessarily have to kind of I didn't have to be accountable for like taking good care of my mental health because there was always something to distract me. And now there's not a lot to distract me. So when I'm feeling precarious, especially because I know I suffer from seasonal affective disorder. So like in winter, I get super bummed. Plus this kind of new level of lockdown or confinement and a lot of uncertainty kind of floating around. I definitely feel more vulnerable to my own mental health stuff. So to be able to have like a really like active strategy of grounding, getting into my body. So like after all that mental stuff, I will try and work out for like an hour to 90 minutes, yoga, running, lifting, whatever. Just because like I got time, and that helps like me feel connected to like my heart space, but also like even if I'm not necessarily excited about being alive that day, like I get like I can act my way into right thinking. We talk about that a lot in recovery. Like if I try and like think my way into right action, it also often will like die at the start. But if I kind of like have a bunch of like do no matter what stuff, that I will feel better in spite of myself.
100%. And I love that our routines are so different as well. Because I think, one thing that's really important is figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, and I mean, the one that you'll do, I think, is really the
right. No matter
best
what
morning routine, like, when you do.
No matter how many like Instagram swipe throughs I go through around positive thinking or just like understanding what's going on is not going to necessarily like shift my perspective. Like I always say that the why isn't necessarily important. It is like happening, the shit is going down, but like trying to really just understand it via news or via social media isn't necessarily going to help my mental health, quite frankly.
And often you feel really bad.
Yeah, because I don't know where anybody else ends up, but when I get into the why, I'm like, burn the patriarchy. That's it. Like, why are we not setting fire to the world and restarting over again? And that's not an option. So yeah, that is a suggestion, by the way, guys. Like, anyway, So that's some grounding strategies that we both kind of do. What about sort of lifting strategies where you're connecting with joy, excitement, and things like that?
I mean, for me, it's like kind of making a conscious decision early in the day, kind of as part of that ritual to, like, often it will look like a gratitude list, or if I know I'm kind of coming up challenges with, if I'm coming up against challenges being like a hard conversation, or like if I'm not feeling particularly joyful, to make kind of emotional space for that part of myself and to like make contact with it, because I spend so much of my time is like spent avoiding how I feel. And that, so especially like often I know we're close friends. So a lot of that will be co-regulated when I make contact with somebody who is in my corner, which I think kind of we'll get into this idea of like community and what does asking for help look like and what does co-regulation look like. Like a lot of my lifting strategies, if I can't do it alone, or if I'm feeling too kind of precarious within my own mental health that day, to be able to reach out and kind of touch base with somebody that I trust and be able to kind of either ask for help or also like being of service. Because there's always like, part of lived gratitude is showing up and being helpful to others, you know? So, I mean, I think it's a hard time, but like one of the few lights in this fucking tunnel of a season, year, decade, whatever, is the fact that we are not going through this alone. You know, it's not personal and it's not isolated. So to be able to kind of commiserate and also like co-regulate and co-heal is a big part of the lifting strategy.
100%. And I do feel like figuring out who to check in with is really important. And that's something I just want to touch on. Like for me, this is something I learned early on in recovery, is around the traffic light system, right? So we have green light, amber and red, right? So, and these are interchangeable. So just figuring out who my green light people are, you know, and it probably won't be that effing many, like it's going to be just like one or two people. And obviously this is interchangeable because we're all going through different spaces. Like we cannot expect another human to be able to like hold my hand through every space. Obviously professional help, that looks differently, but like,
and it's important, and if one can afford it or has access to it, like
right. Highly recommend it. And we've both profited in different levels from like either coaching or therapeutic work or therapy. However, saying that, like figuring out who my green light people are, you know, then my amber people, it might be even the people I'm living with aren't necessarily my green light people, and that's okay too, because again, everybody processes things differently, right? And then my red light people, probably if I'm having some difficulty with my feelings and I try to share that in a space which is not necessarily great, that could be your family, that could be
co-workers.
Yeah, co-workers, right, absolutely. Sort of, so I don't shoot myself in the foot and I don't gaslight myself by not going, okay, who are my safe people to check in with?
Yeah. Or like seeking water in dry wells. It's like, if I know that somebody, whenever I go to somebody, they are unavailable to meet my need, that's totally cool. That's not who I go to when I need help.
Right. I'm not going to go to the croissant shop like trying to buy cigarettes, because it's not can I have cigarettes? Not in France.
Good metaphors with this.
This is a French-based metaphor, but it's...
Wait, no. I just wanted to speak to that to one sec, because I know that like in our relationship, a lot of the time, like you will ask me if I have bandwidth, like, which is super, super helpful. Like, and I try and return the favor, but you'll be like, I'm having a hard time. Do you have bandwidth right now to take a call or field a question? And it's like, that's awesome, because a lot of the time, like I totally have bandwidth. And then sometimes I'm in the same place as you, and that's not necessarily the, like, sometimes it's actually wonderful to go to miserable people so we can bitch together about needing cheering up. But sometimes it's just like, it's tough, you know? Sometimes I don't even have the like bandwidth to pick up the phone. So it's such an act of love to like check with somebody before you jump on them.
Totally. And I also at the same time, I think like if you need professional support, you know, it's also really helpful to have, you know, somebody in your corner in that way. And not all of us can afford that right now. That's certainly true, but there are a lot of resources out there, which I know are being promoted here, where you can get support. And often therapists right now in this time, I know the Music Industry Therapists and Coaches Collective, of which I'm grateful to be a part of, are offering discounted sessions. So that is also a resource that can be tapped into. You know, like, I think the worst thing to think is that like there is absolutely no one out there, because it can feel like that, but that's not necessarily the reality and the truth that we live in. There are resources out there. Brave first steps can be just like sending a text, and I do believe the Samaritans have a helpline for that. You can even text if you can't pick up the phone.
Awesome. And if you're in America, like NARAS and the Grammys have Music Cares, which helps people who are in the music industry have resources available for mental health and addiction help.
Amazing.
Important.
Something else that feels really important is like fucking off, right? Like this idea of...
Tell me more, Rose.
Let me tell you about my fucking off. I think it's really helpful not to put an expectation on self. Like, I definitely, in lockdown 1, we created a podcast. I mean, that happened pretty organically after weeks of just sort of sitting around twiddling our thumbs, and that was okay. But this time I'm really keeping expectations of myself much lower, and thinking about ways to really just fuck off. Like, this isn't a time to like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna build this. I mean, I might try learning new things as a way of kind of spicing up my imagination for 5 minutes, but if it doesn't feel right, I might not persist. So finding ways to fuck off, I think, are really important. One of my best ways to fuck off is read something really trash, something you'd be embarrassed to talk about, potentially. I had this experience. I thought I was really incapable of reading a book, and it turns out I just needed to read a book that I was embarrassed to talk about. And I learned that in lockdown last time, because...
Voila, 50 Shades of Grey.
50 Shades of Grey, oh my God. And we have a podcast around like integrity in intimacy, and I'm reading 50 Shades of Grey. But you know what? I really just needed to do something futile and trash. And okay, a lot of people might not find that book trash. It is lightly...
You're like, it's definitely trash. Moving on.
But anyway, all I'm saying is just finding something that doesn't, you know, I was done reading like self-help books or like books that were trying to like, okay, I'm going to change my perspective with Eckhart Tolle. Like, it wasn't the moment for me.
Well, and I think that like what you're saying around having a space to just like give oneself permission to be off the hook. Like, I know that a lot of my, sometimes I will have a lot of creative energy and a lot of like physical energy during this time because there's not a lot going on, but I'm finding that it comes in real fits and starts, and that I'm not necessarily in control of those because there is so much kind of like ambient anxiety and like weird feelings and depression going on, at least in my life right now. I don't know about you guys. So to have like the ability to kind of surf that wave as it comes in of like, oh man, like today feels like a good day, let's capitalize on it. But then like, not kind of putting pressure on myself to like kind of succeed or perform or achieve, because like there's enough kind of pressure coming from the outside that adding that to myself is not necessarily effective or like positive for my mental health or my relationships.
Right. Yeah. And especially if you're living with somebody else, if I'm trying to like, you're like, I just gotta learn this new thing. There's a really good phrase in recovery around how important is it? And I think could be helpfully applied to any of these suggestions. If it's feeling like, how important is it that I really do this right now? You know?
Also, progress, not perfection. You know, it's like, today, am I making progress in any way, shape, or form? And generally, yeah, like, even if that progress is like listening to myself better and being more compassionate with my need to like lie low and fuck off. No?
Totally. We talked a little bit about this, but asking for help, also knowing when to ask for help. Again, when is it time to ask for help? We have a little checklist. Lou, do you want to read some of the things from the checklist?
Which one? We have so many checklists.
We have a lot of checklists. See us for a checklist.
Oh, here we go. Like, here's a helpful, I'll post it in my social media at some point, but everything is awful and I'm not okay. Questions to ask before giving up. Are you hydrated? Have you eaten in the past 3 hours? Have you showered in the past day? Have you stretched your legs? Have you said something nice to someone? Have you moved your body to music in the past day? Have you cuddled a living being in the past day? Have you seen a therapist in the past few days? If you're having a really hard time, this is a really important one. Again, like, we spoke to resources regarding seeking outside help, but like, it's great. Have you changed any of your medications in the past couple of weeks, including skip doses or had a change in generic prescription? If it's daytime, are you dressed? If nighttime, are you sleepy and fatigued but resisting going to sleep? Do you feel ineffective? Do you feel unattractive? Do you feel paralyzed by indecision? Have you overexerted yourself physically, emotionally, socially, or intellectually? And have you waited a week? So this idea of like, all things must pass, but like, here are some kind of cues of like, here's what I can do to start to feel better. And also, if these things aren't working, like at what point is it important to ask for help, either from your friends and family or peers, or from a certified professional coach or therapist.
Absolutely. And one other thing, not shoulding on yourself. Shoulding on yourself is bloody huge.
Shoulding, not shitting.
Yeah, not shitting. It is kind of shitting on yourself in a way. It's one sure way to like shit on myself as if I should on myself, I feel. So yeah, what do you do? How do you kind of navigate managing your expectations and not shitting on yourself?
I mean, honestly, like, I've really tried in the past few years to remove the word should from my vocabulary because it feels really unkind. Like, my spiritual practice is a lot about kind of staying present and trusting that I'm exactly where I need to be, you know, like resisting nothing, which is so fucking hardcore. It's awful. But like, I find that like perfectionism or kind of being addicted to like achievement or like the idea that I need to be different in order to be lovable or okay is like not an effective way of being kind with myself, and therefore not an effective way of being kind with others. Like, it doesn't help my compassion, you know? So it's kind of, it's not a tool in my toolbox anymore. But to avoid doing so, I think a lot of it is like learning how to kind of return to presence, like how am I in my body right now? And if I'm feeling really bad, like how can I kind of access this space in me that can be compassionate enough to be like, hey, what do you need? You know, like, what do you need in order to feel okay?
Yeah.
And like, then doing
having your own back no matter what. And, you know, that's something you and I talk about a lot. Like, we co-regulate each other in that space, don't we? We're like, hey, you know, it's okay. Yeah, like, it's hard for me sometimes to have my own back 100%, especially for somebody who likes to take care of others. And so but it is really important, because I am taking care of others, that I have my back. And so that this idea that I'm pulling from a full cup, not an empty one, I'm giving from my excess, not from my core, and trying to nurture that. I don't do it perfectly, but this idea that shoulds is going to help me get that done. Like, I can also apply should to like these mental health principles as well, and that can be really dangerous.
I should be better and different.
I should be more well. I should be more positive at this time. I should be showing up for others better. What about the fact that I might have just showed up at all? You know, the fact that I did send that friend a text message to see how she was doing. The fact that I didn't start a fight with my partner because he didn't put the shit in the dishwasher, you know, or something, you know, futile like that. But certainly those are living spaces becoming smaller and feeling more kind of tightly in can definitely make things feel more stressful than they are, because I'm not getting that perspective of being out there. And I think a lot of us, like, certainly in my career when I was working actively as a performer, was a lot of it was therapeutic. I didn't realize until I stopped performing how much of my work on stage was actually helping me process a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to process in real life. So like, knowing that if you're having feelings coming up right now, it's okay, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it will be okay, you will make it through, but the only way goddamn through is through. And it's certainly not through a drug or a drink, because they are not your friends. They are friends described, just, you know, like pimping themselves in sexy little bottles and being like, I have a solution, just to relax for one. And it's like, it's rarely the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people can actually regulate with substances, but like we both know that you and I can't. So like if that's something that you're turning to more frequently in these challenging times, maybe take a look at that and kind of examine your feelings around it, because it's so easy to make externals a crutch, you know, and that can quickly kind of get dark or weird.
And then finally, just talking about gratitude. Now, firstly, gratitude doesn't mean you have to be buoyantly happy. Gratitude is a tool to help you shift your perspective. Yeah, and actively seeking it when things feel hard. I know that I try to do a small gratitude practice in the morning. Just I don't should it, but I do kind of, there are things that I will kind of be like, have a discipline around this, because it doesn't necessarily feel good in that moment, but it helps me later on in the day. For sure, because I'll have had a different perspective around the fact that like my body's sore, but I'm grateful my heart is still goddamn beating, you know. It's not to kind of Pollyanna and paint everything pink, but certainly to have a shift in perspective throughout the day.
Yeah, I think even in kind of challenging times, it's like this last week was really disappointing, but it's possible to like, as a result of having trained this gratitude muscle, you know, kind of being in a practice with it, the idea of like, I can feel disappointment and anger and sadness and grief and heartache and like feel debilitated, you know, but at the same time, like I can find great gratitude in like, in the moment, in the present of like, it's a beautiful day, I'm healthy, my family is healthy, like, or if my family's not healthy, I can have access to this feeling of like, I love them. I'm able to be present as much as possible. You know, like there's always something, you know, and I think it's a beautiful thing because it can be held in tandem with whatever challenge is going on, you know, and like to be able to find the gift in the struggle, I think is like one thing that is really a powerful, powerful tool during these struggle-filled times.
Indeed. Wicked. Well, we hope some of that was helpful for some of you, and yeah, take care of yourself, take care of each other as best you can once you put your own oxygen mask on first, and stay safe.
Rose, where can people find you?
People can find me at Rosie Romain on Instagram. You can slide into my DMs. What about you, Liv?
I'm at LOUISAHHH on Instagram, and that's the place. So feel free to holler if you need some help.
Thank you.
Thank you.